If you're wanting to calm down fast before speaking in class, today's live stream is for you. You can do this. I'm going to help you through it. Here we go. I'll be sharing two quick tips for you, and then some encouragement as well. And if we haven't met before, my name is Dr. Parke. I'm a psychologist who's been helping students since 2005. And I also taught as a university psychology professor for 10 years. And if you're a student and before you speak up in class, you're feeling that rush of anxiety or nervousness, maybe your body starts freaking out, I just want to start by saying I totally feel you on this. I, personality-wise, am a shy, introverted person. I always have been. And growing up, I was a high-achieving student, but I wouldn't really participate in my classes unless a teacher called on me or I was required to do a presentation. So in other words, I wouldn't speak up in class unless I was really required to or forced to. And when I would participate, what would happen for me is that my heart would start pounding in my chest and be pretty intense. And even now as an adult, I still have that happen sometimes where I feel my heart pounding so hard in my chest before I speak up in a group setting, before I teach, before I present in front of people. But the difference now is that I've learned tools that are helpful for me, and that's what I'll be sharing for you in today's live stream. Of course, what works for me is not what's going to work for you necessarily. You need to experiment through trial and error to see what helps you, but I'm going to kind of give you some directions in terms of what you can try, and I'm going to reframe this situation for you. So the first quick tip for you is you do need to calm down your body somehow. And what I like to do is an example coping tool called combat breathing. We're going to practice it right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a deep belly breath. So not up here in our chest. We're going to breathe down in our belly. We're going to inhale for a count of 4. We're going to hold it for a count of 4. Exhale for a count of 8. And then hold for a count of 8. So let's do that right now. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Super simple, right? And the reason it's called combat breathing is because they do sometimes actually teach this to people in the military so that they can calm down their nervous system when they're in high threat situations and need to make decisions. Something that I love about breathing techniques is that you can use them in class and no one has to know about it. And so you can do that just in, the privacy of whenever you're doing it in class and no one has to know, and super quick. And the cycle that I just taught you of 4, 4, 8, 8, you can repeat that as many times as you need to as well, or you can just do it once. So find a way to calm down your body. That's a quick coping tool for you example. On my channel, I have an entire playlist called the best anxiety coping tools, and you're going to get a whole menu of like tons of coping tools. I think it's like 76 coping tools or something, but I just wanted to give you a quick example for the sake of today's topic in this live stream. I need to grab some water. Water break. Cool. Okay. So the second tip is that I want you to ask yourself what you're afraid of. I want you to interrogate your fear. So this is something you're going to do outside of class. It's a little bit more of like personal growth work, but really ask yourself before you speak up in class, whether it's answering a teacher's question, whether it's being called on, whether it's speaking up in a group of students, or whether it's presenting, what is it that you are truly afraid of? And then you're going to ask, and could I cope with that? If you're afraid of looking stupid, if you're afraid of people laughing at you, if you're afraid of getting the answer wrong, if you're afraid of not knowing what to say, freezing, going blank, stumbling over your words while you're presenting or speaking, I want you to take an honest, hard look at that and then ask yourself, how could I cope with that? And so, for example, if you're afraid that you're going to speak up in class and say something wrong, what if you do? Sometimes we speak up in class, and if the teacher's looking for a specific answer, we might not get it right. And that's the honest risk that we're taking. I've done that before in classes as a student where I spoke up and didn't get the answer right. And I just kind of had to live with that. But the deeper reality here is that usually when I have conversations with people who are afraid of speaking up in class, what they're actually doing is avoiding feeling embarrassment, humiliation, or shame. None of us humans want to experience embarrassment, humiliation, and shame. And so feeling afraid of those is totally normal. Feeling afraid to speak up in class is totally normal. And actually, when we survey humans about their fears, it's usually like public speaking is really high up there, sometimes number one or number two. And it's kind of like right up there with death and uncertainty. Okay. So it's totally normal to feel afraid to speak up and to feel afraid of embarrassment, humiliation, or shame. But what I want you to do is to think about, okay, how could you cope with saying the wrong answer? You know, your teacher's probably going to move on and call on someone else in all likelihood, or they're just going to say what the right answer is. And you could just tell yourself, for example, oh, well, I tried. Or if everyone else knew the answer, like they would have been raising their hands. Or this is how we learn. We try and then we learn. And the reason the teacher was asking is probably because most people didn't know the answer to that question. And you have to face the fact that you are going to feel embarrassment, humiliation, shame. You might feel, but this is me giving you some tough love to say, like, we can feel embarrassed and we can move through that. We can feel humiliated and move through that. We can feel shame and move through that. And when we name it, like I actually feel calmer even in this moment saying those words out loud. When we name it, when we acknowledge that it's there, that inherently takes some of the power out of it. And what's really much more painful than any of those emotions is trying our darndest to avoid them at all costs in our lives. If we accept that normal human life is going to involve some measure of embarrassment, humiliation, and shame, which I wouldn't wish on my worst enemies, but if we can accept that those are realities of our human life, we're actually ironically going to experience less pain because we just make room for those. We know that they're there. We don't fight them. We don't try to avoid them. We don't try to control them. We can just like move through our day and be like, well, that was embarrassing, right? That sucked, but oh well, moving on. Okay, so those are my two quick tips for you. I taught you combat breathing, and I also taught you to ask yourself what you're really afraid of, which is interrogating your fear. And again, to summarize that second one, you're going to ask yourself, what am I afraid of? And how could I cope with that? And I want you to be really realistic with yourself about those, okay? I want to take this conversation a little bit deeper by encouraging you speaking up in class, speaking in front of people in general. About coping tools. I teach coping tools all the time. I think that they have a role. I also think that they are limited in the extent to which they help us. So, what I mean by this is that coping is one thing, but courage is a much deeper, I think, even much more important aspect when it comes to speaking up in class. And courage means feeling the fear and doing it anyway. So what this means is that when it comes to something like speaking up in class, we can do what we can to calm down beforehand. And at the same time, we can take courageous action even when we still feel afraid. Sometimes when I talk to people about their fears around speaking up in class, I get the sense that they think being a confident speaker means that you calm your anxiety all the way down to zero, and then you can talk and you can speak. The secret is that the best public speakers, whether it's in a group, in a meeting, people who present in front of massive groups of people, the secret is that they've learned to feel the fear and do it anyway. And yes, they might have some effective coping tools that turn the volume down on their anxiety a little bit, like take the edge off. That's great. I do that too. But I don't want you to assume that you have to quickly bring your anxiety down to zero and then you can be a confident speaker, because it honestly doesn't work that way. And if you have that expectation, you're setting yourself up for frustration and failure, and you might even beat yourself up about not being able to do that. It's a really unrealistic expectation to think that you're going to quickly calm down your anxiety to zero and then speak. It's a much more realistic expectation to say, I can use a coping tool or two to turn the volume down on my anxiety a little bit. And even if it's still there, I'm going to feel the fear and do it anyway. And that's the secret. The best public speakers that you're going to see anywhere have learned to feel the fear and do it anyway. And they've practiced that muscle so much that the fear doesn't stop them from doing what they want to do. The fear doesn't stop them from pursuing their goals in life. And that might mean that they, again, can speak up in a meeting, they can present in front of people, they can be, I don't know, a keynote speaker, or like folks you see on YouTube presenting in front of massive crowds. They've learned to practice that muscle over time and not let the fear stop them. So something that's been helpful for me is to reframe that fear. And I still sometimes feel it in my body. Like my heart pounding, for example, is typically a telltale sign for me. I've learned to rethink that. I don't think of it as a problem that my heart is freaking out inside of my body. And that might sound funny, but because I've practiced this so much, I know that that's going to happen. And I don't look at it as a problem. I tell myself, my body is telling me that I'm about to do something important. My body is sending me a signal that I'm about to do something important, and it's helping me prepare to do that. So I want you to dig deeper and really ask yourself, what type of person do you want to be? What are your goals for the future? What are your hopes and dreams? And if part of your future vision for yourself is going to involve having conversations with people one-on-one, speaking up in a group setting, or even presenting in front of people, then I want you to look at class as a small little microcosmic version of a way that you can practice that now over time. Challenge yourself little bit by little bit to get outside your comfort zone. And the more you do this, it's not necessarily that the fear is going to get smaller. What's going to happen is your courage is going to get bigger. And as your courage gets bigger, your fear doesn't seem like such a big deal anymore. So that's my dream for you. Hope this live stream helps you to get there one step at a time. And as we close out for today, I do want to say that if you are a college student and you're struggling with stress and anxiety, please know that I host an online community where college students can find peer support and make friends. You'll find study buddies, you'll have accountability to other people, and you'll make consistent progress. So please consider joining us. I'll put the link in the pinned comment below. You can check it out, and I also welcome any questions that you have. All right, hope you have a good rest of your day.